everybody, it's Jim of Animateducated, and I just got back from a screening and a Q&A with the creators of Arcane. It was hosted by Netflix, and Amid Amidi of Cartoon Brew interviewed the creators, and so here they are. Check it out.
I'm going to bring out the people that you guys are here to see. I forgot to introduce myself. My name's Amid. I'm the editor-in-chief of Cartoon Brew. And thank you. No, I want to get the order right. So we want to talk a little bit about what we just saw. You know, at the heart of Arcane, it's this story of Jinx and Vi and Vi. Sorry. And you know, it's a story about family and reconciliation and estrangement. And so for me, it's about so many other things, but that's one of the cores of the show. And for me, like, that ending is shocking. We don't quite. I don't think that Jinx is dead. I don't know if there's some openness there, but I certainly felt sad though, because there wasn't that sense of them reconciling, that big hug at the end. And what was interesting for me is I read that this part of the story you guys had plotted out like 6 years earlier. You knew that this was coming, and so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about some of the choices that you made, that knowing this going into season 2. That some of the choices that you made leading up to this story, like how did that affect the storytelling, knowing that this was going to be the resolution?
I mean, the project really started when we, honed in on these two characters and just wanted to know, I think one of the first few conversations we've had, even in their room, there was this question of, can they be sisters again? And that's the question till the very end. As you kind of venture out into the larger story with them, a lot happens. Vi has a lot of things that are, I don't want to, unforgivable, I think is the right word here. Jinx as well, for them as sisters. And so I think at the end of the day, I think especially Caitlyn and Jinx, have this very, very charged relationship. I think there is a learning, especially for Caitlyn, to kind of see what happens when, you lose your parents to, because of the other side. So much of her judgment is based on that, and so she experiences that, and also has to understand that is what happened to Jinx. There is in a very strange way, Caitlyn and Jinx are kind of a mirror reflection of each other, and so I think there's an understanding. I think there is a certain respect, but there's too much has happened, for on a personal level, also just on between these two societies, and so it was a very charged moment, and I think for us just also to work around all these aspects. I guess I'm being vague. I understand for reasons, but it's always been, we always knew it was going to be complex, and that there wasn't there was never going to be just a clean happy ending.
I also think what was nice about what we got to do in season 2 is we got to put Jinx in Vi's shoes as a big sister for once. She got to understand where her sister was coming from, and then she got to, in that final moment with Vi, she got to take back the agency that she never had as a child, because she had that tragic accident that then dictated the course of her entire life. And so, she saw Isha take agency in her life and make a decision for her, and then she saw the opportunity where she could do that as well. And so that was, giving her that moment to come full circle there and reclaim that in the final moment with her and Vi was, really kind of the culmination of her arc there. And for Vi too, you mentioned this earlier, we always knew she would never be able to give up on her family. And setting an emotional boundary with a family member is kind of the hardest thing to do, I've found in my life. And so again, when Jinx was able to do that for her, and say it's okay to move on. I think that she got back that agency that she lost that caused her trauma to begin with.
I will add to this, like, we talked a lot about how the creation of Jinx really, you know, well, like that very powerful moment in episode 103, you know, so much of like what really created Jinx happened there, and so this you know, the death of Vander, and that like potentially, you know, is there a chance to kind of like bring the family back together if that can be undone? But in the end, the answer is no. And so I think I remember, you know, I talked to someone that works in the field, and a lot of the conversation was about like, how do you deal with these trauma, you know, and the mental health issues that come out of it. And he said something really nice that stuck with me. He said that often people try to just kind of make it go away, but it's much more about building up resilience and moving forward. And I think that's definitely a lot of that also was just always in my mind. But yeah.
Bart, when you're getting these scripts and there's these really kind of intense emotional scenes, talk a little bit about the process of how you take that into animation. Are you having constant conversations with Amanda and Christian about this, or how do you communicate to the animators the emotional depths that these characters are going through?
Yeah, it's a never-ending conversation. You know, we keep talking with the writer, with Christian, with Alex, till the end of the process, basically. So as we get the script, then we start brainstorming. Obviously, the challenge was very haunting and overwhelming, because that was the last episode of like such a huge adventure for all of us. I'm not gonna lie, that was the most complicated episode to make from a technical standpoint. You know, it's a long episode. We knew we shouldn't do anything wrong. I mean, we had to make it look right. So the pressure was on, but sorry, what was the question again? Sorry, I flew from Paris yesterday and the jet lag is eating a little bit.
I'm just wondering how you communicate with the animators, and whether, like, are you guys looking at the scenes afterwards and asking for emotional changes in the characters, or is it, you know, it stops with you, you're kind of approving scenes, or how?
Yeah, so we got the script, we start brainstorming with the supervising director at Fortiche, the two co-founders of Fortiche, Pascal and Arnaud, and we are brainstorming about every sequence, gathering references that feels linked to the script, and then again we go back to the writers to discuss what we think should be the look of the pictures, and then we keep brainstorming, and then we move to the storyboard, and then there is another pass with the team, just to make sure like it's hitting the goals of the script, if it's hitting the right emotion and everything. And then the rest of the production is maybe a little bit more straightforward. As we are doing the final episode, you know, we got a little bit experience about how we need to do that stuff. But yeah, the first pass on the animatic was a very long process, longer than the other episode, I think.
I think it helped that we had a full season.
Yeah.
That we worked, like, first season, it was kind of like all hands on deck all the time on everything, which was kind of crazy. And then second season, you can trust, like, okay, you've, as a team, worked on this together now for, at that point, I mean, you know, a number of years.
Yeah.
And so then you can start to like really trust the team, and everything has a rhythm.
Talk a little bit about planning the fight, all this huge fight sequence in the last episode, but also you can go to any of the episodes. There's action in every episode, but one thing that strikes me about Arcane is everything is always so incredibly clear and well staged, and you can, you know, you always know what's going on. You're never confused. You know, you see a lot of superhero films and you don't know like where you are in the space, but you guys plan everything to perfection. And this last episode, I mean, there's like hundreds of characters in a huge fight scene, and yet you're never confused about what's happening on screen, about who's fighting. How do you guys plan something like this?
It requires a lot of time and trial and errors. You know, we did mess up some stuff a lot before finding the right pacing. The editing part was quite challenging. How do we? I don't know. I think all the fights it's a specificity. We don't shoot and we don't film the zero gravity sequence the way we shoot the I don't know, Mel and Ambessa fighting. You know, so this cinematographic grammar helps defining the type of fight we are talking about and telling about, and I think that helps not being too confusing as well. Even though all these fights had to be edited next to each other, and we knew we had like a very fast pacing, and we also wanted to have some time to breathe. That's what we try to do with Victor and Chase. But yeah, part of making every fight scene unique was, I think, a solution to make it more understandable and readable as a whole piece. It doesn't make any sense.
Nothing in animation makes sense. Amanda, so Kate and Vi's relationship is one of the key center points of this second season. Can you talk a little bit about the development of that relationship? It's such a powerful part of the story, and I'm curious, was that planned the entire way along, and were there challenges in communicating that relationship throughout the season?
So yeah, in the first week in the writer's room, I know Christian and Alex came to me and they're like, this is going to be the main couple in the show, this is going to be the main romance, and I was like, oh, I can help with that. I'm very into this type of representation, and so I'd seen everything, and so I wanted a story that was different, that was something that my 16-year-old self felt like she never got to see, and it was tremendously important to all of us, really. But I think the first thing I always tried to do is, like, I had to figure out, like, first of all, if we're gonna tell a story, it's gotta take the whole series to get there. It's gonna be, so we have to make that challenging. I think one of the first things I said was like, oh, if Vi and Caitlin are gonna end up together, why doesn't Enforcers kill Vi's parents? Because that would be a hard thing to overcome. So trying to build in those obstacles so that when you do get them together, it feels very satisfying. And then when you start with that, oh, Enforcers killed my parents, then suddenly you're like, okay, well, how could Vi love this Enforcer? Well, so I always start with, well, how could she respect this person? And so Caitlin was someone who was handed everything. She didn't have to fight for anything. She chose to fight for stuff. And Vi, who was a person who had to fight for every scrap her whole life, could, I thought, look at someone who didn't have to fight yet chose to fight and chose to fight for her and respect that and eventually fall in love. So that was my sort of North Star for that relationship and building the love between them. And then the whole team rallied together every moment. There are so many like wonderful details in animation that you guys added, and just the little gentle touches that go along the way. And so we were always very specific in the first season about that same-sex attraction between them, like not leaving that part to subtext and putting the little moments in. And also, being bold and saying, okay, but we're going to take our time to earn this, and we're going to wait till the second season that we know we have to really, pay off that relationship. And we're going to make it an integral part of their arc and the story. Them coming together, they really are, like you've said before today, Christian, they're the symbiosis of the two cities that can't find a way to reconcile. So.
Also for you, another question. Now, I know as a writer, I know this is a tough one to ask, so I'll ask two parts. But do you have a favorite character to write for, And is there, and if that's too hard to answer, is there a character that you wish you could have written more for in this series?
I'll answer the second one first, which is because I wrote this before I became a mother, and since becoming a mother, I have like reshifted my perspective on everything. And I think that I think I understand Ambessa a lot more now, which is to say that like the links you're willing to go to for your child, you know, you cannot understand until you have a child. And you know, I think we thought we understood that at the time, and now I would go back and I would make her even more batshit, like in the sense that like she would do anything for her kids, you know, including like rend the world. But so I think, yeah, I would love to do more with her. And then, yeah, I mean, it is real fun to write for Jinx because you can say anything. And like you'll never get tired. And like oftentimes you're like, wow, this is the craziest thing I can think of, and it's not crazy enough. So it's really fun but then you really have to work to find that right voice for her. And you know, again, a lot of trial and error there. So.
I want to go back a little bit to the beginning of this because the vision for this show is so incredible. Christian, can you talk a little bit about what were you I mean, nothing like this existed before Arcane. So I'm curious, when you were developing this idea, what were you looking at about, you know, to make a show like this? And like when you were making it, when you wanted to make it CG, were there other things that you were looking at that you were like, we want to make it like this? Or I know Fortiche did some early music videos for the games. Was it just basically make more of that? Or what was your grand vision for this when you started this? I don't know how long ago, 10 years ago?
10 years, yeah. That was the hardest part. You couldn't point to anything. I will start by saying that, you know, in hindsight, I mean, to me, it was just, it's obvious, right? It's like, hey, how about we bring the quality of animated features to the serialized format? We know people would like this, but, you know, we were very, very, very fortunate that we worked for a company that's like, we believe in this. We believe in, you know, video game IPs, we believe in animation. We're only kind of beginning, and so we were very, very lucky that we got to do this. But it was very hard. You couldn't point to really anything. It was very difficult. I mean, it's hard to get a sense of this, but every step of the way, we had to look at, okay, how does it work in animated series? How does it work in animated features? You know, the role that editorial plays is completely different. Whether or not like an animatic moving into a layout, timing completely getting ripped open again. Can we use Scratch VO or not? Because if we do, we have to. The second we get the real VO, we have to re-edit every episode, and that's 6 hours or whatever per season. So like, there's a lot of things where you can hire people from either industry, and they'll want to do things the way that they've always done them. And I was kind of in the situation to go, I was going to listen to both of them and decide which one I want. And sometimes that was a good decision, and sometimes tried to reinvent the wheel just to find out that it's a wheel. And so, but that was...
What's an example of that? Of like something maybe that you tried to do different that maybe it wasn't the right approach?
I think, for example, the Scratch VO situation, like features, the really so much of features often, animated features often is kind of written in boards, if you will, right? And so you try a lot of stuff with Scratch VO, for example. And so I was like, yeah, let's do that, you know? But people that come from the animated series world were like, you're gonna kill yourself because the sheer amount of material is impossible. And I was like, we know what we're doing, and it was just a disaster. I mean, it's just not possible. It's just too much material, and so we just had to. It was hardcore. You really had to like, okay, we record the VO when we're locked in, and then we're gonna get a little bit of, when we record the next episode, we can get some ADR for the previous episode, but that's it. You're not gonna have to, you will not be able to just like have these big pivots, you know, that the animated feature will often gets. So sometimes that was difficult. Sometimes you would. I mean, I remember there were moments when like editors were like, "What do you mean storyboarders are going to time their own shots? That's insane." And I sat there. I was like, "Well, I mean, they're the ones drawing them, so I feel like they should get the first pass." And they were like, "You're insane." I was like, "All right, we'll find out." But I mean, there were so many of those because no one has ever had to kind of bridge this, because again, in the animated feature world, or the timing question, right? Like, the expectation was, okay, when we go from storyboards into layout, timing is going to be completely new consideration because animation will need very different things. And we're like, well, we kind of have to already account for that in our storyboarding, in our animatics. Otherwise, we're just going to get eaten alive, by like the sheer amount of time this will take. So there was an unending,
you were inventing a pipeline as you were going along.
Yeah, it didn't exist. You couldn't hire anyone that had done this. And so even when you're selling the show, it's like, what is it going to be like? You're just like, oh, it's kind of this format, but it looks like that. And so...
Also, another really unique thing about it is the music in it. Now, you're a former musician yourself, and you started the music division at Riot. Can you talk a little bit about how you incorporated music into the series? Because there's like kind of a music video segment in every episode of season 2. It's a huge part of the success of the show is just what it sounds like.
Yeah, from the beginning, I think we just said, like, let's find a moment where we have a music video per episode, where like the music is the star, and so... that basically, most of the times they weren't even in the scripts. It was just something where...
Sometimes we use them to tell like a bigger story we didn't have time to tell properly. Yeah, they were not all the time in the script, no.
No, it would be during the storyboarding and the editorial phase.
Yeah.
They would basically look in the episode like, where could this be cool? And then you kind of have a space where you go with the team, okay, here we could write a song. It was, I said earlier, another thing, I mean, it was difficult about it is that the lead time you need to produce something like this. It's like when we approached artists and we said, do you want to write a song? They were like, yeah, sure. When is it going to come out? In like 6 months, And we're like, no, in like 2 to 3 years. And they would be like, we can't do that. We need our music to go out. So that was very difficult. We were an unproven studio, unproven people. There was like, who are you? Who's Fortiche? Music videos, like making the full, like this is crazy. So a lot of labels were like, we don't want to give you our artists. So.
Am I regretting that now?
Let's just say it was easier during season 2. But I mean, it was like, so I had to pivot. I was like, okay, this is not gonna work. I'm not getting any songs, so we just have to write the songs ourselves. And so we had a composers that worked. I was like, hey, like I need help. And so they wrote the songs, and then through kind of crazy maneuvers, we were like, Sting, would you like to sing a song? And somehow he said yes. And so that was difficult, but yeah, we knew it was in our DNA. We started the relationship, making these music videos and cinematics, and honestly, that was like so in our DNA. It just happened pretty naturally. It was always scary because I mean, like, you have to make good songs. It's always hard, especially when you're just like, here's a key scene and this better be good. Any musician will know that like out of 20 songs that you write, 20 of them suck. And then the 21st is maybe for you. But it's hard, right? This predictability that you need. But it was just part of our DNA.
Yeah, and it's like you say, it's part of our culture at Fortiche. We've been doing music video for quite a long time, and it's always a good place for us to also have fun visually, because we can step aside a little bit, go for like different visuals, different type of editing, different type of animation. So we always enjoy doing this kind of special sequence in the show. Yeah.
Another thing that Fortiche does really well is fight sequences. Every single fight sequence that comes up, it's so original and different from the previous ones. And can you talk a little bit about showing power and strength in animation, your approach to that? Because there's constantly characters that are being introduced who are more powerful than the previous characters. Right, and that can be a real challenge to communicate that this character is more powerful than the previous character that shows up. Can you talk a little bit about developing those fight sequences, how you made sure they were different from each other, and how do you show, like, communicate force and power in these action sequences?
Since we knew we would have like a lot of fight scene, we from the very first beginning we tried to make them all unique to be able to identify them, and it comes from the writing, you know. When you in the first episode of the first season, when you have the kid doing the street fight, you're not gonna do something over the top and crazy, since they're just like kids playing without any magic or power. So you have to find like a more gritty, grounded kind of way of filming them. There is not a lot of effort in the movement, but it has to feel messy and realistic. You know, like all the punch don't land. You know, some are missed. You can hurt yourself, and I remember like Christian was quite specific about this intention for that sequence, and from that one we try to again find all the time something very unique in every scene. As much, for instance, as we wanted something grounded for most of the fight scene. As soon as Jinx arrived, we knew we could break some rules. So you know, the physics, the gravity didn't matter that much. You know, we can play around. We can look for a more like anime kind of way of animating the camera, animating our movement, being a little bit more fun and crazy. And yeah, we carried on with that process till the zero gravity fights you just have seen with Warwick, and yeah, that one was also a very complex one to do, because it was we didn't get any reference, you know, and most of the time we shoot like a lot of reference. We couldn't make a trip to space to shoot any reference, so we had to figure out how it works. But yeah, that was fun.
I don't know if we're allowed to ask this, but this is clearly not the end for our at least stories from Runeterra. Are you planning? I know you're not doing more Arcane, but what kind? Can you hint at anything that we can expect from the future?
Yeah, I mean, we're only getting started. You know, this was the first thing that we've made, and so there's a lot more we want to do. Honestly, at this, it comes down to the people. You know, that there's a bunch of characters where we can say we know these are popular, but it kind of doesn't matter if what we make sucks. You know, and so honestly, it's more than it's something that stuck with me when we worked on Arcane during a pretty difficult time in the beginning. I remember talking to the CEO of Riot, because I was like really trying to decide. I couldn't let this fail, you know, and he kind of pulled me aside at some point and was like, hey, like, I just want you to know, make sure you understand, we're doing this project not because as an investment in Vi or Jinx, but in you and Alex, you know, like, so I see it now the same way when I look at the different teams that we're working with, is that you pick the right people, you know, and that's where you take it. So yeah, I mean, we have a big IP. We have, you know, we know the things that our audience would like to see. So we're looking at those too. But yeah, there's a wide range. That's the wonderful thing with animation also. We want to do things that you wouldn't expect based on what you've just seen from us. You know, I mean, and you can do anything in animation, which is very enabling, but also very scary. Because if you make something that is everything, it is nothing. And so I think we're just really eager just to stretch out, you know, our feelers and just like in every direction and put more stylized, more realistic. Let's just see, and where we find something that just like kind of strikes us as like, here's something new that we haven't seen.
Well, I hope
so many words saying nothing is amazing, right? Oh yes.
Well, no, I hope all three of you remain involved. You guys have accomplished amazing things with this series. You've redefined series animation and turned it, you know, you've set a new standard for what we should expect from animated shows. So congratulations to all three of you, and I'd like to give them a big round of applause, everybody.
I want to add one more thing. I assume there's also people here working in the industry. Quite a few. So, look. I think this is a very, very special time for all of us. I think people that work in the video game industry, also some people. I think 5. But animation, I think we're seeing, you know, the world is really paying attention to what we do, you know, and I think, you know, we started coming from the video game world, but also just the animated space. It's becoming more and more, you know, the norm that people check out these new genres and kind of like technology-based entertainment, and I think it's just a really exciting time. I hope that, you know, we were very lucky that we got to make Arcane. I mean, just this is an unprecedented budget. We know that, and I hope that, and I think we're also hearing that from more and more people, you know, in their offices, you know, and among other video game studios, kind of go, all right, maybe we should try this too, you know, and that's good, and that's great, you know. So I think I'm really hoping that, because we love games, we love animation, we just want to see more cool shit. And so I think it's the right time just also to, you know, to hopefully, I don't know, just I think there's not enough of like a creative exchange, frankly, among people that work in animation, and it's there's so much, you know, genius stuff happening in so many places. Tools are getting easier and easier to just download Blender and go ham, right? I don't know. I'm just really excited about what this generation can do.
I think we need more companies like Riot who kind of just let you go free and do something like this. We need more companies like that, maybe.
Yeah, I think there's this famous interview with Frank Zappa. If people, I don't know, you check it out on YouTube, where he talks about like music industry in the 60s, where he basically says like the best thing happened when the executives were these cigar chomping old men who were just like, I don't get it, but we just tried a thing. You know, and he's like, we need to get back to that. It was like, you need to just try some stuff, you know? And it's like, in many ways, Arcane was that. And frankly, whenever I had like these opportunities over the years to meet people that kind of had that like lightning in a bottle, you know, with like big movies or whatever, it tends to be that it somehow happened. You know, it was like, it wasn't supposed to. I remember talking to, you know, a bunch of the folks that were the Pirates of the Caribbean. You know, I asked them like, how, like, it was massive. It was like this, and it was like, yeah, all the pirate movies before failed the last few years, you know, blah blah blah. But we just were allowed to do it, and I feel like I recognize that, you know, what we were able to do, and I think that we definitely need studios more to embrace that. There's like, the pitch for us was, it doesn't exist, but we know that we want it, and we know that like this audience wants it, so we need you to kind of just imagine with us, you know. And that was, we were very lucky, and hopefully what we are doing can inspire some execs to be like, fuck it, let's try it.
That's a great note to end on. We need more cigar chomping executives. Yes. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that interview with the creators of Arcane. I want to thank Netflix and Cartoon Brew for sponsoring this event, where they gave everyone this art and making of Arcane book, which is a beautiful book full of interesting things. If you're interested in finding out more about that, you can look at this video right over here, or this one over here for other things, or you can subscribe by pushing that button. And we'll see you next time on Animated Educate.